3. I decided to I wasn't horny. I had nothing else to do. I had been home a week and was sick of Netflix. I sat at my workstation and browsed some. I looked at a girl with red hair and lips and wondered what it would be like to talk to her. I dug myself out of my pajama pants. I was overcooked pasta. I thought, kind of like a stump. And that was a terrible idea. Horrible. I began to shrink. I wondered if I should search for some amputee, by which I meant for amputees. Then realized that was not what I would find. I searched anyway. I found a beautiful woman with one arm and another with no legs below the knee, and I thought they were pretty hot and kind of inspiring, but I did not want to masturbate to them. I remembered a study on male chimpanzees and how those on the lower social rungs exhibited severely depressed sexual desire. I shut down the computer. I felt lonely. I woke to a terrible cramp in my foot. Not the foot I had. The other one. I groped around in the dark, grimacing and clutching at empty sheets. I hauled myself upright and turned on the lamp, threw back the sheets. See? Nothing there. I was talking to my brain. Nothing to hurt. I leaned forward and pretended to massage the space where my toes would have been. As a scientist, I am not proud of this, but it seemed to help. I swallowed some pills and kept massaging. I was ahead of my prescriptions, but this was a temporary problem. Soon my brain would figure out it shouldn't be feeling phantom pain, because I was a pretty smart guy. I was on my sofa, playing with my phone when it rang. I didn't know what the H it was doing. I was scrolling through an article and suddenly the whole screen changed and it made a noise I never heard before. I thought, pop-up advertising? I saw a blocked, declined answer. I moved my thumb to the answer button. It felt strange, as if I were attempting to microwave something in the TV. Hello? Dr. Newman, a woman, not Lola. There was a lot of warmth in Dr. Newman, like she enjoyed saying my name. It was a month for unfamiliar experiences. It's Cassandra Caltry from the company. How are you? Hello, I said. Again, I was not good on the phone, obviously. I just wanted to reach out and see how things were. There was a pause, during which I realized this was a question. Good. Great. Cassandra Caltry was quite hot, I remembered. I was talking to a hot woman right now. I thought so. I've seen the reports from the hospital, and they were glowing. I was extremely pleased. You know how much we're concerned about you. Okay. I wanted to float an idea with you. The idea of coming back to work, she paused. This can happen completely on your timetable. We want to do it so it works for you, but I'm not sure if you're aware there's evidence that returning to work is extremely beneficial for you, I mean. You get re-engaged, get busy. You're not just sitting around the house. Not that you're doing that, she laughed. My coffee table bore 4 half-empty boxes of cereal and half a dozen snack wrappers. On the bookshelf was a carton of curdled milk I'd been meaning to throw away for 2 days, but always forgot until I sat down. I had an email from my internet provider telling me that although I was on, quote, unlimited download plan, end quote, there were reasonable usage guidelines, and they would appreciate if I tried to stay within them. I know it is with engineers. Never happy unless you're building something, so do you have any thoughts about when you'd like to come back? I said, tomorrow. Tomorrow? I mean, absolutely, let's do tomorrow. I heard her shuffling papers. That's terrific. I'll send a car. A van. A car is fine. I have a leg. Of course you do. I'm thrilled you're being proactive about this. I really am. It's great if we can show you're able to return to full duties relatively quickly. It just reduces any potential messiness on the legal side, you know? No. She laughed. But I was not joking. So let's get you back on the horse. How's 8 a.m. tomorrow? Okay. I took the phone from my ear and tapped end call. The screen faded to the home page. I had an appointment. I entered it into my phone, then checked the call log. There it was, an incoming call. It had lasted 3 minutes, 42 seconds. I looked at it a while because it was kind of remarkable. I showered, but not for long because I didn't have a chair like in the hospital where I could sit and feel water drain past my butt. I had to get one of those. I gripped the shower screen and hopped to my towel. I could have worn the Exorcist. It was water resistant, but then I wouldn't have been able to wash the stump. If there was one place I needed to wash, it was the stump. I dried myself on the toilet, pulled on the stocking, and fitted the leg. I had not been wearing it much since I got home. Lola Shanks would be disappointed. When I stood, the plastic socket squeezed me, and I thought, that's right, that's why I don't like it. But I lumbered into the bedroom and opened the closet. When I was dressed, I walked back to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I was leaning on my biological leg. I straightened. The Exorcist did not look so good poking out of the bottom of a pair of business pants. It looked like a forked tongue, like I had stepped in something and become tangled. I felt nervous. At the hospital, lots of people had something wrong with them. I walked into the living room and sat on the sofa. My phone rang. The driver. I sat there and did not answer. It stopped, then it rang again. This time I tapped answer. Hello, I said, I'm ready. It was a black town car. The driver was overweight and had a cap and a little beard. He opened the rear door and told me it was a beautiful morning. Once we were on the road, he said, That's a fancy-looking foot you have there. I looked up from my phone. He was watching me in the mirror. It's an exorcist. Oh yeah? What does it do? It converts kinetic energy into forward motion. I was describing walking. The driver whistled. Nice, he said. Nice. We pulled into the driveway that arched past the main lobby doors. The driver sprang out to open my door. Before I got my phone into my pants, he was offering me his hand. I took it. He levered me to my feet. It was bright, and I squinted. Two people came towards me, Cassandra Cottery and a tall, smiling man I didn't recognize. There he is, said the man. Great to have you back. His ID tag said Dr. Peters. D. Peters. I think he was my section head. I didn't recognize him because he was a senior manager, and they didn't go into labs. D. Peters extended a hand, and I shook it. It felt strange, like I was meeting him for the first time. We're so pleased, added Cassandra Cottery. She was smiling, too. Everything set up for you. We began to walk towards the glass doors. I was a little awkward, and my ski toes dragged. That's amazing, said D. Peters. What is that called? It's an exorcist Archean. And what's the idea there with the design? It doesn't waste so much kinetic energy. He nodded. Clever. The glass doors parted. We entered the air-regulated coolness of Better Future. The lobby had very high ceilings, even for us, and was connected via a glass wall to the atrium. There were birds in there. They lived their whole lives inside the company. A couple of white coats crossing the floor glanced at my foot with professional interest. It was hard to walk when you were self-conscious about it. I'm going to let you get to work, said D. Peters, but if there's anything I can do for you, anything at all, I'm a phone call away. Okay, good man. For a second I thought he was going to punch my arm, but he didn't. He strode briskly away to do whatever managers did. Have meetings, I guess. Make phone calls. It was hard for us on the technical side to understand why the company required so many managers. Engineers built things, salespeople sold things. Even human resources I can understand, kinda, but managers proliferated despite performing very few identifiable functions. Cassandra Cottery swiped into Building A. I followed. You can really move on that, she said. I nodded. We didn't talk a while. When we reached the elevators, a few people joined us, but no one spoke. I couldn't tell if they were uncomfortable around my leg or didn't care. Cassandra Cottery inspected something on her sleeve. The elevator dinged, and we stepped inside. A man tried to join us, but Cassandra Cottery said, Would you mind very much taking the next one? Thank you. The doors closed. The car hummed. Cassandra Cottery said, I suffer from diastema. Her face was faintly flushed. It's a gap between the teeth. She dug a finger into her mouth and stretched back her lips. Between her canines and her molars was a space almost a centimeter wide. She released her lips. I saw 5 different specialists, but they all said the same thing. It's inoperable. There's a bundle of nerves there, and the way the teeth are sitting, they can't be moved without risking permanent damage. Facial paralysis, she blinked 3 times. It was hard to deal with. Growing up, I dieted. I ran and swam and did Pilates. The girls in my social group were in high school. Well, you probably won't understand, but they were fierce about appearance. I told my parents I wanted to do operation anyway. I didn't care if I got facial paralysis. They said no. We fought for months. The elevator doors opened. Cassandra Cottery glanced out. The corridor was empty. I shifted uncomfortably, but you know what? I'm glad I have this. I'm proud of it. Not proud, grateful for the lesson. You can't be perfect, no matter how hard you try. That's the message. You don't stop trying to improve yourself. You keep pushing yourself in the areas you can control. But when you come up against something like diastema, all you can do is accept it. You can only take a deep breath and say, This is who I am. There was a silence. Okay, I said. I've never told anyone else about this. I'd appreciate it if you kept it to yourself. Okay, she smiled. I just want you to know you're not alone. Cassandra Cottery escorted me as far as the glass room. Inside, my lab assistants, Jason and Elaine, were at the desks. Catherine I could see down in Lab 2 doing something to rats. Catherine was always messing with those rats. She made them little houses and ramps out of sheet fiber. One had a kind of swing. I had been meaning to take her aside and tell her that she should regret this kind of thing when it came time for destructive testing. Jason and Elaine's eyes followed me across the floor. I landed in my office chair. Elaine said, Welcome back, Dr. Newman. Thank you. Elaine looked at Jason. Jason said nothing. Elaine said, We're glad you're okay. I turned on my computer. This thing took forever to boot. I fingered my pants pocket, seeking my phone. We had counseling. I looked at her. Why? To deal with it, the accident. It was pretty gruesome, very gruesome. I have nightmares. She hesitated. Across Elaine's forehead marched a parade of acne. She had violent skin. She wore her hair in thick bangs, but you could still see it. It was good, the counseling. They encouraged us to talk. They said we should share our feelings with you if you were comfortable with that. I looked at Jason. He was very upright, his face stiff. His head moved left, right, to left very slightly. I felt grateful to Jason if everybody were like him. We could just move on and pretend nothing ever happened. Elaine said, so I don't know if you are comfortable with talking about it. If not, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, okay, no problem. She turned away, her shoulders hunched. I'd consigned her to nightmares, I guess, but I wasn't responsible for her brain. I didn't control what she thought. She was a human being. She should take ownership of what occurred between her ears. Welcome back, Dr. Newman, said Jason. He was visibly relaxed. He swiveled back to his desk and we got to work. I left the glass room for lunch. The corridors were busy and my ski foot attracted attention. People stared without shame. We were a company of engineers. They were interested in how things worked. I kept moving, but when I reached the Building A cafeteria, there was a line. The man ahead of me turned and saw my leg. Hey, are you that guy? Which I said yes. You chopped off your leg? He bit down and peered in the lab. Crushed. Do you mind if I touch it? Two more people in the line turned. A beard guy got up from his table and headed towards me, trailing lab assistants. Okay. Interesting shape, said a woman behind me. Let me just roll up the pants here, the man glanced up. Is that okay? I can't see. I'll do it. I pulled up the pant leg. There was a murmur of appreciation. I flushed. Look at the knee, said the beard. It's moving with Pinchton here, said the man, now on his hands and knees, peering up. That what? Makes it more comfortable to walk? And his leg fits into that plastic bit, the socket. What holds that on? Straps, I said, just cloth straps. There was a silence. The blue shirt guy peered around for another few moments, but I didn't see anything else that caught his attention. Well, that's really amazing. Incredible, said the beard. Just fantastic what they're doing. Very smart, said the woman. These people's ID tags said aeronautical development and molecular re-engineering and biomaterials. To the average scientist, stupid was failing to account for behavioral changes exhibited by magnetohydrodynamics when accelerated to supersonic speeds. It was being uncomfortable with Gödel numbering. A few months ago, I had attended a presentation on living gels, and when a man in the audience said something that was smart, he was referring to a process for tricking living cells into fusing with carbon molecules for the first time in human history, and he said it grudgingly. We did not use the word smart lightly. We would not use it about a hinge. Very nice. Someone patted me lightly on the shoulder. Very nice. I rolled down my pants, ashamed. I carried my lunch to a bathroom and locked myself in a stall. As I picked my sandwich out of the plastic wrap, I remembered what Lois Saints had said, that things would be tough and that would make me a better person. She said it was about how you respond to the challenge. I was glad she wasn't here to see this. I received an email from Cassandra Caultry informing me that a car would take me home whenever I wanted. I just had to call a number. I recorded this on my phone and kept working. After everybody left, I caught the elevator to the AV Center where vending machines offered energy bars, fruit, and cola outside darkened presentation rooms. It was free so that engineers wouldn't wander around trying to find the most efficient sources of calories per dollar. I chose some snack bars and apples and returned to the glass room. I had nothing to do. Most of my work had been reassigned while I was away. The remainder had no deadline. I ate my snacks and played with some programs, but was not inspired. I read a sensationalist article about the future in embedded operating systems. Around 10, I picked up my phone. The driver said he would be 10 minutes. I waited 5, pulled on my jacket, and left the glass room. When I stepped out onto the ground floor, the corridor lights glowed a dim yellow, and the lobby was empty. My footsteps echoed a soft scruff from my shoe, followed by a scrape of carbon polymer, like some kind of machine process. I discovered building had bunks. They were small, featureless rooms with barely enough space for a bed, but anyone could use them. If you had 2 hours before catalytic cracker finished, you could get some downtime. There were also showers and a 24-hour kitchen. I half expected to find it populated by a loud jockey community of scientists, like island shipwreck survivors, but it was empty. I called my driver and asked if he could collect some things from my house. That night I microwaved a shrink-wrapped meal and slept in a bunk. When I woke, I showered and dressed and caught the elevator back, and this entire time I didn't see a single other person. I wished I had thought of this earlier. It became annoying to sit to transit from standing. The exorcist was good for movement, but gave me nothing when I went to lower myself into a chair. It was all up to my biological leg, which was thin and weak and complained at the effort. At the hospital, when I'd been doing physical therapy, it had bulked up a little, but since then it had shrunk back to default size. So now I accelerated into chairs, making a woof upon impact. It wasn't a huge problem, but it was not ideal. When the assistants left, I removed my leg, clamped it to a workbench, and swung over some lighting. I studied the knee, then I disassembled it. By midnight, I had built a governor. It looked like a tin of peaches affixed below the knee. When I flicked a little metal switch to one side, it limited the speed at which the knee could flex. I strapped it on and tried sitting. It worked. I could lower myself into a chair at normal speed with no effort. But I felt unsatisfied. Now that I thought about it, it was very primitive to have to flick a switch. The knee should figure out when to engage itself. At 3 in the morning, I gave up on the governor idea and connected the knee's microprocessor to a computer so I could unpick its code. I figured I could modify this and flash new instructions. This took 8 hours. In the meantime, Jason and Catherine arrived and asked through the speaker if I needed help. I had them bring me snacks. Finally, I loaded new code onto the chip and powered it on. The capacitor popped and died. I stared at it. I needed sleep. With a clear head, I could figure this out. I pulled on the leg, smelling still sweat, and hobbled out. Without a functional microprocessor, the leg swung like a garden gate. The ski foot flew out in front. I made my way to the elevators with one hand touching the wall. When I reached my bunk, I pulled off the straps and threw the whole thing on the floor. I wanted Elaine to fetch me a cadmium battery, but she was nowhere to be found. "Have you seen Elaine?" I asked Jason. He swiveled to face me. His glasses reflected my halogen workbench light. I thought. He looked at Elaine's desk. It was very clean. "Didn't you get an email?" I rolled to my keyboard. It had lots of emails. I read a few. I looked at the 40-character previews, and when they began, "Season's greetings from everyone here at OR. Seminars are now open for bookings on a..." It was obvious they were just noise. Emails I needed to read began. "Didn't you see this? You must..." or "Your apartment has again failed to..." or something like that. I scrolled through my inbox. I had to sift through a lot of useless information about who wasn't allowed to park where and why their air conditioners would be off from 4 to 5, but then I found it. It was from Human Resources. Elaine had transferred out. The email didn't say why, it just said it was thought best. "Oh," I said. That night the cadmium battery fried the microprocessor. I had known this was a possibility, but still it was disappointing. I sat at my workbench and stared at the thin wisp of smoke twisting out of the plastic knee. It was fixable. I could replace the chip, but then I would be limited by the transistors. Every time I upgraded something, something new became a bottleneck. I pushed myself away from the bench. It was late. My problem was I was tinkering around the edges, trying to improve it beyond the capability of its fundamental design. I was thinking like everyone else, that the goal of a prosthesis was to mimic biology. I closed my eyes. I felt warm. I opened them, found a pad and pen, and began to write. I sketched. I filled 4 pages and took the leg off the table and put it on the floor to make room. I had been going on about this all wrong. Biology was not ideal. When you thought about it, biological legs couldn't do anything except convey a small mass from A to B so long as A and B were not particularly far apart, and you were in no hurry. That wasn't great. The only reason it was even noticeable was that the legs did it using raw materials they grew themselves. If you were designing something within that limitation, then okay, good job. But if you weren't, it seemed to me you could build on a lot more features. 3 weeks later, I called the hospital. I was very excited. I had been putting this off, waiting until I was calm, but that never happened, so I finally just did it. I closed the door to my bunk room and faced the wall so nothing could distract me. "Lola Shanks Prosthetics." "Hi, it's Charles Newsman. I was in there a few..." "Charlie, where have you been?" I was supposed to visit the hospital for follow-up sessions. They were mandatory, but the kind with no penalties for non-compliance. "Busy? Can I see you?" "Yes, that would be good. I hope you've been keeping up with your physical therapy. You're in trouble if you haven't." "When can you come in?" "Can you come here?" I was tapping the floor with my ski toes. Tick, tick, tick. I made myself stop that. "I have something to show you. I want your professional opinion." Okay, why not? Where are you?" I met Lola Shanks. I had to go to the lobby. I hadn't been above ground since I discovered bunk rooms, but she needed to be authorized, so I rode the elevator and walked the corridors. This was harder than it sounds because I was wearing the exorcist and had never gotten around to fixing the knee. It tended to get away from me. I stuck close to the walls, but I limped past hardened engineers without a single question. This puzzled me until I realized I had become pathetic. I reached the lobby and fell into a black sofa. I pulled out my phone and hooked up every few seconds to see if she was coming through the doors. I was early. I leaned forward and peered at a scale model of a mobile weapons platform that sat in a glass case off the low coffee table. Its little plaque said, "Civil Peacemaker, VO53. It was essentially a caravan with guns. I had been to a presentation. The idea was you towed it somewhere like a recently captured city and left it there making peace. Hey. I jumped. Lola Shanks was coming towards me wearing a little polo shirt, white pants, and white sneakers. Her hair was held back with a thin white headband. My first thought was that she had come directly from exercising or perhaps some sort of religious event, but I think it was extremely uniform fashion choices. She held out her arms. I got off the sofa, which required rocking. My unregulated ski flute flew out. Lola grabbed my hands. "Whoa, what's wrong with the leg? It shouldn't do that." Before I could explain, she rolled up my pants. "What's this?" She tapped the tin. "I modified it." "You what?" But now she had exposed the knee. What was left of it. It was a half-melted empty casing. "Where's the knee?" "I broke it." I felt uncomfortable. People were watching. Lola got to her feet, her brown eyes flicking between mine. "I didn't get to say goodbye at the hospital." "That wasn't supposed to be goodbye. You were supposed to come in for sessions." "Oh. Why did you break your knee?" "I was trying to improve it, but then I got the idea to build a new one." "A new knee?" "A new leg." "You what?" "I built a prosthesis." "Prosthesis? Well, I'm still tinkering. It can be better." "You built a leg?" "I'll show you." "Yes," she said, "please." Lola was escorted to an interview room by a guard, and I returned to the sofa while she answered questions about everyone she had ever met, everywhere she had ever been, and her Facebook profile. I flipped through the company glossy, looking forward. We were immunizing children in Nigeria, apparently. Lola took so long that I went looking for her, and I was told she was in the multi-scanner. This was like a metal detector for an advanced definition of metal. I was surprised because that should have been the fastest part of the process. You just had to stand there. Finally, Lola emerged, doing up her top button. "They swabbed me," she said. "They swabbed my mouth." The guard handed her a tag. "Please wear this at all times. If you lose it, you can't get out." Lola looked at me amused, and I shook my head to tell her no, seriously. She clipped the tag to her polo shirt. "Was there a problem?" "Oh, no, I just have trouble with metal detectors." She adjusted her glasses. "Forget that. Show me your leg." "One of the problems with biological legs," I said in the elevator, "is that you can't survive on their own. They're not modular. This creates isolated points of failure and dependency issues." "All of which go away if you make the leg self-sufficient." Lola looked up from fiddling with your access badge. "Self-sufficient? As in it works by itself. It doesn't need a warm body for fuel. The Exorcist doesn't need fuel." "Yes, it does. Look, I'm giving it kinetic energy right now." "Oh, I see. Without me, it just sits there." I glanced at her. "I mean, it's better than nothing." "That's a really good leg, Charlie, for what it is. Go to a public hospital, see what they're making kids walk around in down there." Her eyes glistened. I said, "Sticks," Lola said. "Buckets. On sticks. The Exorcist is also a bucket on a stick. That's my point. It's a terrible design. Why has nobody built a prosthesis that can walk by itself?" "That's what I want to know." "A what?" "It's obvious." I gestured with my free hand. "You put a motor in the leg." Lola stopped walking. "Have you put a motor in a leg?" "Yes. No, not a motor. Several motors. You need multiple motors to redundantly articulate the toes." I was nervous. I hadn't shown anybody the leg, not complete. I had even hidden it from my lab assistants. "It's experimental. There's a lot I need to do, but I want your feedback as a professional." Lola studied me. Then she looked around. "Where is it?" I took her to Lab 4. It was unlikely we'd bump into any assistants. Catherine spent most of her time these days with the rats, and Jason was glued to his terminal in the glass room. Given the opportunity, Jason would probably stay there forever. We had much in common. "How far down are we?" She was looking at the steel buttresses lining the walls. "About 60 feet. I swiped my ID tag on the door reader. The door clicked. "You need to swipe your thing here, too." Why are we down 60 feet? In case something goes wrong, she followed me into Lab 4. The leg was beneath a white sheet on an insulated floor mat. It was surrounded by workbenches and lights. The sheet was because I didn't want anyone looking at it from the glass room and giving suggestions. Lola looked up at me. I nodded and she approached it. I looked up. No sign of Jason. Good. Lola touched the sheet. Can I? I pulled off the sheet. Lola inhaled. I looked at her face to see if this was a good inhalation or a bad one. It was hard to tell. How did the leg appear to someone who hadn't seen it before? Kind of spider-like, I guessed. The upper section was a black lattice of interlocking steel. From there, 2 silver pistons fed into a splayed 8-toed foot. I had been very proud of this, but suddenly it looked creepy. Lola walked around it 3 times. She stopped near the clamp. It was still there. You didn't decommission machinery of that caliber just because some idiot managed to lose a limb in it. You built this? Yes. How did you build this? You know, I shrugged. A little at a time. It looks heavy. It's about 200 pounds. I pointed at dents in the floor. It made those. How do you lift it? I don't. It walks by itself. Lola looked at me. It's not ideal. It has to remain in contact with the ground, but it can handle stairs. Those toes can get up to 10 inches long, and you can't see it, but underneath are 2 orbital wheels. On a shifting multi-dimensional axis, it alternates between toes and wheels depending on the terrain. She walked around the leg. What is this? She gestured to a series of black aluminum cases welded up near the socket. The processor housing. I'm not really happy with the positioning. What's it for? Systems control, data storage, GPS, Wi-Fi, etc. Your leg has Wi-Fi? It has to, otherwise it couldn't interface with the online pathfinding API. Lola's eyebrows rose. You shouldn't need to tell your leg where to step. You should tell it where you want it to go and let it figure out how to get there. That's basic encapsulation. Lola looked back at the leg. I don't think she really understood encapsulation. She knelt beside the leg and ran her fingers over the metal. I'll put it on. I pulled over an office chair. I began unstrapping the exorcist. It clanked to the floor, and I flicked the latch that caused the new leg to ease down into a bent position. The hydraulics hissed. I positioned my stump against the socket and slid in. That was nothing special. It was just somewhere to stick my thigh. There are no straps? I shook my head. I basically rested it. I steadied myself, then stood up in the leg. Ready? She nodded. I pressed for power. The servo-magnet started near silently. There was a line of crude buttons for simple functions, and I pressed one for short forward journey. The leg flexed in 3 places and glided forward. I leaned into it and performed a matching step with my biological leg. This was the clunkiest part of the whole procedure. I wasn't happy with that. The entire time Lola was silent, I cleared my throat. What do you think? Oh, Charlie, it's beautiful. It's completely beautiful. Oh, I said. Oh, thank you. After I escorted Lola back above ground, I returned to Lab 4 and sat on the floor beside my leg. I thought Lola might like my leg, but you never knew. Her reaction exceeded all my expectations. Then I felt depressed. It was the opposite of a logical reaction, but there it was. I always felt like this at the end of a project. It would be frantic and determined and excited, then sad because it was over and there was nothing left to improve. I stared at the leg. It occurred to me that I hadn't escaped my bottlenecks. I had only pushed them back. I had made a leg that could walk by itself, which was okay, but I could see now that this was about as far as it could go. All improvement from here would be incremental, because the bottleneck was my body. It was late. My lab assistants had left. I looked at my leg, the good one. Well, I don't mean good. I mean the one I've had since birth. I rolled up my pants and turned it this way and that. It was fat and weak and ordinary. The more I looked at it, the more it bugged me. I pulled my prosthetic leg apart. I didn't mean to, but once I got started, I kept seeing more and more things I could make better. When I saw it lying in pieces, I panicked about what I had done, but it was okay. I could rebuild this. I scavenged parts from adjoining labs. I sent my assistant out for hard-to-get materials. I didn't tell them what they were for, but they probably knew. You didn't become a scientist if you could resist the urge to check what was under the white sheet in a spotlit laboratory. I stopped answering email and performing paid duties. I did not shave. I built the leg into a new configuration that increased its mobility by half, but immediately saw a better solution and stripped it down again. Some time passed. I'm not sure how much. Sometimes I fell asleep in the lab and awoke in a cold puddle of drool. When I visited the vending machine, I carted away as many snacks as my arms could bear and piled them into the corner so I could work for longer periods. The worst thing was going to the bathroom, which was all the way at the end of the corridor near the elevators. The best part was making it there, because then I had 6 to 8 hour uninterrupted window ahead of me. And while leaning back on the toilet with my eyes closed, I would have ideas. Messages from Lola accumulated in my voicemail. On the nights I made it into my bunk, I listened to them before falling asleep. I put her on speaker, and it was like she was in the room. Her message urged me to call her, turning increasingly anxious. It was good to feel wanted, but I did not call her back because my legs weren't quite ready. Jason brought me a set of 30-inch coil springs. I had the leg pieces spread across my workbench. I wasn't hiding what I was doing anymore. We had passed that point. I realized he wasn't leaving and pushed up my goggles. Yes? Jason's eyes flicked across the components. You wanted 2 springs. Yes, thank you. It looks like you're building 2 legs. I looked at my pieces. It was hard to deny. I don't really, said Jason. I don't understand why you want 2. Back up. Oh, he did not look convinced. Still, he hung there. Is there anything I can do for you, Dr. Newman? Anything at all? I thought about this. I would like some more snacks. He brought them. I finished my new legs. Well, I reached a point at which I no longer felt an urgent clawing need to change things. I tried to stay calm, but I was trembling inside. I swallowed over and over. I felt scared to look at them. It was silly, but everything about this moment seemed fragile. I couldn't wear them, of course. They were a set. I didn't fit. But I could sit beside them and enjoy their presence. It was quiet, just me and them. When I was 15, I was almost killed by a shirtless man in a Dodge Viper. I was crossing a suburban street on my way home from school, and he roared around the corner. I don't think he expected me to scurry out of the way, but I didn't because I was 15 and valued appearing tough to strangers over remaining alive. The shirtless man clearly shared this philosophy because the car jagged toward me. I realized I was going to die, or at least be hurt a lot. By the last second, too late, in a car less well engineered, the Viper slid to a smoking halt. The driver leaned out of the window and screamed abuse. This was when I saw he was shirtless. He wore mirror shades and chunky jewelry, which flew around as he gesticulated. I tensed in case he was about to get up and beat me up, but he only stabbed his fingers in my direction, punctuating insults I couldn't hear over the torrent of high-fidelity music pouring from his stereo. Finally, he put the car in gear and drove off. I watched him slingshot around the next corner, already up to 40 or 50 miles per hour. I walked on. I felt vaguely outraged that such a bad person had such a good car, because the car was the culmination of 1,000-odd years of scientific advancement. But the guy was I wondered when that had happened, that we had started making better machines than people. My assistants arrived in the glass room holding coffees and talking about something they seemed to find funny. They saw me and froze. Dr. Newman, said Catherine. I am furthest from her lip movements. I was on the other side of the polymer glass, and she hadn't toggled the intercom. I waited for her to realize this. Dr. Newman, what's in the syringe? Morphine. This came out muffled because I was holding my shirt sleeve in my teeth, but I think she understood. I completed the injection and let my sleeve drop. For the pain. Catherine and Jason shared a glance. Jason leaned toward the microphone. What pain is that, Dr. Newman? I felt disappointed. These guys were supposed to be the brightest minds of their generation, yet here I was in the clamp, with a syringe of morphine, and they couldn't figure it out. I think that will become obvious. On one wall of the glass room was the big red button. If you flipped up its clear plastic panel and pressed it, everything lost power. A sign said emergencies only. A while ago somebody had taped beside it, do not push, because lab assistants are curious. Jason's eyes flicked to the button. Please call medical, I said. To his credit, Jason made it look like he was going for the phone. He leaned in that direction and picked up the handset. They lunged to the big red button, but my button was closer. It was in my hand. The clamp was powered up, humming on standby. Its steel plates were positioned about a foot apart. I was sitting on the edge. My left leg, the biological one, dangled. It was just as well I took care of this in advance because the morphine was already seeping into my neurons, fogging my synapses. If I hadn't been prepared, Jason would have reached the big red button before I could activate the clamp and crush my leg, but I was, and he wasn't. And he didn't, and I did.